Welcome to Educating Barry, where family meets honesty and love meets learning. I'm David, founder of Queer Education Consultancy, and with me is my dad, Barry.
Together, we're navigating the twists and turns of modern family life, one conversation at a time. Whether you're a parent, child, or just curious about LGBTQ+ experiences, join us as we share our journey of understanding, acceptance, and unconditional love.
Remember, we're sharing our own opinions and lived experiences. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Educating Barry. Today we're going to delve into life in school during the 90s, considering what it was like as a child under Section 28 from my perspective, but also considering my dad's perspective as a parent. So Dad, Section 28, something we've kind of talked about a little bit, I guess.
Like most things in life, go straight over my head.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Do you know what it is? Do you want me to...
I think Section 28 is all about being gay, being illegal until a certain period in time. So if you give me the overview, I'll get a better understanding.
But basically, it was part of the Local Government Act of 1988, and Section 28, because that was the section it was under, it prohibited the promotion of being homosexual by local authorities. So the reason it had an impact on schools is because at that time, every school was under the direct control of the local authority, whereas now we've got a very different landscape. I mean, the free schools, academies, and all that kind of stuff. So it came in then, and the reason it came in is because there was a book called Living with, I can't remember it now, but it was basically a kid's book that talked about a child living with two.
Okay.
Or living with a gay
Quite
couple.
normal now then.
Sorry?
Quite normal now then, really.
Quite usual now, yeah, rather than use, because if you use the word normal, what's abnormal?
I agree. One of the words that I don't like using, if I can help it, is normal, because what's normal to me is not normal to you, and what's normal to you is not normal to somebody else. So what, as you say, is normal.
Exactly. So
those words
you're right.
It's so misconstrued, it's unreal.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So now we're okay with it. So then Section 28 came in. We couldn't talk about it being a pretend family relationship, basically. Section 28 effectively meant that schools were banned from talking about it. They weren't actually, but they were scared to because they didn't want to get into trouble.
So you're saying they weren't allowed to, but they were scared to. So did it prohibit a school teacher in 1988 from saying anything about Johnny having two daddies?
Technically, no.
There you have the problem.
So it said that a local authority shall not intentionally promote homosexuality or publish material with the intention of promoting homosexuality, or promote the teaching in any maintained school of the acceptability of homosexuality as a pretend family relationship. So it didn't actually say to teachers, you can't talk about it, but it was that use of the word, I think, promote is the really harmful bit there for me. And then also the use of the word pretend. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess the thing about that is, as you say, 1998, this is when you were almost getting to school age. I don't think you're actually school age in 88, because you're in 83, so you'd have been 5, so you would have been about that time. But from memory, I don't ever think it was discussed in any way, shape, or form at the school you were in at that time. It certainly never came across my mind. And because you weren't of secondary school age, I don't think it would have impacted, because when you went to senior school would have been...
I went to secondary school in 95.
Yeah, so it'd have been 7 years after this had happened. So things would have moved on quite... So from your perspective, how did that... I'm guessing it didn't affect you. Did it? How did it affect you? Because did you know at that young age anything about being homosexual? And again, that's one of the words that I find...
Just say gay. It's an easier word, and also there's a real connotation with the word homosexual because of laws like this. So it's
I find that... I don't know about you, but I find the word homosexual quite disrespectful.
Yeah.
Because you're not homosexual. People say you are. To me, you're gay, but as you know, you're Dave. But going back to this thing. So, how did this affect you then in 1988? Did it affect you in 1988? And if not, when did it start to affect you?
Well, I think it's interesting. This Section 28 was in place the whole way through my education, primary and secondary. So I think to a certain perspective, primary school didn't really affect me because I'm not sure I kind of knew what was going on in a direct way. But of course, then when I went to secondary school, it had a massive impact on me because that's when you're more coming to terms with your identity and everything else and who you are, and all that kind of puberty stuff starts to kick in. So I think that's where it really came in. But I do often wonder with primary school, although we never talked about it, I look at the kids that are in schools today. There are so many of them now who are so more, what's the word, confident and accepting of who they are. Maybe because it's just generally accepted more in society anyway, and they're able to talk about their identity. And I do wonder, if I was growing up today, would I be the same person I am now, or would I have got more confidence sooner?
That's a very interesting point, because when you speak to children today, and you don't need to say anything about sexuality or anything else with children, but they are more, because I think children take children as children. They don't see anything other than little Johnny or little Jesse or little Jamie. They just see a person. For me, this is interesting where you say when you went to senior school, because again, if this Section 28 was still prohibiting your secondary school teach from promoting, even though they wouldn't have been able to promote being gay, how did you feel when you thought, because at the time, I'm guessing, I don't know, I'm guessing you weren't sure whether you were gay, straight, or what you were, if you know what I mean, because for me, puberty is one of those things that we all go through, and it's all a weird time, because you think you're pulled in two directions or three directions. Do I like boys? Do I like girls? Do I not like boys and girls? What do I like? But if you're thinking, am I gay, under Section 28, you can't, your teachers can't promote it. So how does it affect you? Sorry, I'm rattling on again, but I'm just trying to get.
Oh, it's because this is the whole point, isn't it? It's interesting how you perceive it as well. But I want to go back a little bit and talk about primary school, because I think the big part is secondary school. Do you think if I was going to school now and primary schools were talking about it more, it would have had an impact on who I was as a person when I was younger?
Absolutely.
How can you?
I think because you hit a nail on the head earlier. We are now so much more open. As you know, I've always been open, and you want to be a gay, fine, fill your boots, don't care. You want to be a woman, again, don't care. Today, when I look at young children, and yet, as you know, I'm very close to one of my grandchildren, very, very close to him. And I pick up school and this stuff. So we do have long conversations, not about anything like this, but you get a general feeling of how things have changed. Like when you were at school, we wouldn't dream of talking about some of the stuff. You wouldn't find little Johnny in the playground wants to be called little, Jesse. That would never been done. Nowadays, you can be little Jesse in the playground, and nobody gives a thing about it. It's like nobody cares.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Society's moved along. There's still a lot of people that go, oh, bloody hell, don't, oh, no, none of that.
So what do you think? So if you go back to like, if Section 28 wasn't in place and I was growing up now as I was then, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have had a positive impact on me?
I don't know whether you would or not, because at 5 years old, did you know?
Well, the only reason I ask is because everyone I talk to says, "Oh, we always knew you were gay." So if
Yeah,
everyone
we
around me
did.
knows I was gay, but I was the one living in this vacuum,
Yeah, but the thing
if
is,
it,
go on. Sorry,
sorry, if it had been talked about, would it have potentially would I have come out earlier? Would I have been more comfortable in who I was and found my confidence earlier? I don't know. I've just been interested in as a parent's perspective, because you know me, age 5, I don't.
I think that's a $60 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because as we said before, how do I come to you and say, Dave, I think you're gay? Are you going to go, fucking I'm gay, I'm bloody man, blah. Because it's that perception. As
Yeah.
a parent, you're always guarded to a certain extent.
Do you think it would have made conversations easier as a parent? If you know it's kind of being talked about in schools and we talk about being
yeah.
LGBT being acceptable.
Absolutely. I think 100%. If you'd have come home to that and said to me as a 5 or 6-year-old, and you said, Daddy, during the week we were talking about Joe has little 2 daddies. Okay, so Joe's had 2 daddies. So we would have talked about it. But I don't think, to be honest, we had that sort of relationship at that time, because I was going through a lot of grief and anger. You were going through a lot of grief and anger. Your brother was going through, there was a lot of grief and anger going on in your formative years. If you take me today and put it back in 88 and you today and put it back in 88, then yes, I think it would have had a conversation about that. Whether you would have said, well, okay, then I'm gay,
Yeah.
is a different story, because that is, I say, the $60 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
To me, it's the biggest thing about this. And the one thing, one of the things I'd like to get out of this is, if I can, if it's a young lad or young girl now, then you're probably having that conversation with them. You're not saying to them, "Oh, are you gay, Dave?"
Mm.
But you can have that conversation about, "Oh, well, little Johnny's had two daddies, or little, Johnny's decided to be little Jessie, or whatever, or little Johnny's had two mummies."
And I
Um,
guess while you're saying that, it's making me think that even as it just makes it a more open conversation, doesn't it? That if that is the case, then in the back of my mind, subconsciously, I know, well, actually, I've talked about this with dad and he's been okay with it. Therefore, I know that if further down the line I want to come out, instead of being stressed at the age of 19, thinking I'm going to be homeless and have nowhere to go and have to live on the sofa somewhere with my best friend, I would have known potentially in the back of my mind that actually my parents have got quite liberal views on this and will be okay with it.
yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of modern society in some respects, because we are talking about this. Um, and if we can get to the stage where people feel comfortable about their sexuality, whatever they are, and however they feel, then power to your elbow.
Mm.
I've always hoped and thought you could talk to me about anything, and whatever it is. I'm not gonna, as I said to you before, and I will, no doubt you'll get sick of me telling you it. I love you because you're Dave. It's not because you're gay or you're this or you're that. You are my son, first and foremost. I may not like you sometimes, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But that's the true of everybody, isn't it? You think to yourself, do you know what? I use my good lady's example. Sometimes I think, for Christ's sake, shut up. But doesn't mean I don't love her. I still love
Yeah.
her to bits. Every now and again, you just think, do you know what? Enough.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of being one of the beauties about being a parent is you should always have that in my mind. I'm not perfect in any way. In fact, I'm probably one of the worst dads in the world. However,
I don't think you could say that, Dad. That's not.
but you know what I mean? It's like I do feel that at times because of some of the ways, some of the things that's happened over the years. Me and your mum splitting up. Me not. There's anyway. That's the irrelevance. But the thing is, you've become a great person. You're putting this thing forward for others to hopefully get people to say, well, actually, do you know what? Why can't I talk to my dad? Why,
Yeah.
or talk to mum? You know,
Or other parents are available, or
yeah, but you could have mummy and mummy. So you could talk to mummy, but not the other mummy, or daddy and not the other daddy,
yeah.
or whatever, or stepdaddy or stepmummy or auntie, uncle. But at least, hopefully, somewhere there will be that. I've been talking about this now quite a while at work and other places, and it's quite interesting because somebody was saying the other week that, and I always thought, again, this is my perception, I guess, and perception is a horrible word because everybody has different perception of everything. It's a bit like normality, isn't it? What's normal anyway? And he was talking about one of their children being gay, and the dad was fine, and the mum's blanked them and
Mm.
said, "That's it. I don't want to talk to that person ever again." So it's like, to me, I'd have thought it would have been the other way round.
But
But
also interesting that two, and I don't know these people at all, two
no,
people chosen to have a family, but haven't really sat down and thought about what their values are and what they consider, what they would want from their child in life. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, but how many people actually think about that as
Well,
parents?
like the only reason I bring that up is obviously, as you know, my partner and I are looking at going through the adoption route, and it's really interesting how much you're quizzed about
But
all of these things.
but when you're like me and your mum, we didn't think, do you know what? I want two children. One's going to be a doctor, one's going to be a surgeon, and we're going to have, little. It
No, and I
doesn't
just find it
happen.
interesting that like even values on the world kind of don't
We
always.
don't. We didn't think about it. We didn't think about what to use this example. We didn't think, well, what if one of our sons turned out to be gay? Didn't even enter the mind. We were more thinking about what if you're disabled? Because there was a big thing about spina bifida when you were born,
Yeah.
and it was like that's a scary thought for anybody. Not that we'd have cared, but you go through your mind. You go to these whole things about what if, but you don't think about you know the things that you're going to have to go through to look for an
Mm.
adoption.
Yeah, it's only interesting because obviously, like I said, we're at very, very early stages of it, but it just made me think it's interesting that we're kind of being quizzed and we'll go through a process where I feel like we'll be quizzed on those kind of things.
So we digress off section 28. Whether it was a good or bad thing, I don't know.
If what was a good or bad thing.
Section 28, whether it was in the context of
How can
what
it ever be seen
changed.
as a good thing?
Well, no, I'm just saying in the context of the time
Yeah, but I still don't see how it can be. Like I'm talking about this, I lived through it. It had a
yeah,
real
but
impact on me.
yeah,
How
you
is it
lived
ever a
through
good
it,
thing?
but I didn't know about it.
Yeah, so
So
how
if
can
you
it
look
be
at
a
it,
good thing? It
no,
stopped
that's
your
what I'm saying.
child
So
being who he was.
yeah, but I didn't know my child was who he was. So all I'm trying to be is devil advocate to a certain extent to say, well, it's in 1988, the world was a far different place. What were they trying to achieve? What were they so afraid of that they had to put a section in a local government act to say you cannot promote homosexuality? What was the big thing in 1988 that said to people, "Oh, we can't mention that.
Well,
That's."
Margaret Thatcher said, children who need to be taught to respect traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay. And all
Hmm.
of those children are being cheated of a sound start in life. Yes, cheated.
See, I don't agree. I'd never agree with that at all.
It sends, as I'm reading it, it's sending tingles like down my spine. She is effectively saying that I don't have the right to be gay.
Yeah, see, that's not even then. However, you've got to look at, as you said earlier, this was a HIV and AIDS epidemic. So she was making political capital.
So her to win a general election, she put a generation of people like myself, I would argue significant harm,
Yeah, very probably.
denied us the right to be ourselves. And I say
Very,
she, just the
very,
Conservative
very,
Party,
very
everyone else
probably
voted.
the whole Conservative Party, like all parties, even today, will jump on a bandwagon. Yeah,
Depends what
but if you go
happened.
back to 1988 and the HIV and AIDS epidemic,
I don't deny that there needs to be preventive measures to put in place to look at HIV and AIDS.
that's if you look at the statistics, and I've read somewhere about this, quite a lot of non-gay people caught AIDS. It wasn't as they called it at the time, the gay AIDS, the gay plague. It was a horrible disease that was impacting both males and females
Yeah, but why was there no investment put into treating it?
because they didn't want to, did they?
Exactly.
Until somebody like Princess Diana stood up and started shaking people's hands with AIDS. Because if you go back to 1980s, being gay was almost being dirty in some respect.
Exactly. So this is, but you have to remember this is what was being told about people like me.
Yeah, yeah, and this is what I'm saying. This is
The
why you've got to
headlines
look at
were just
this. It's like
horrific.
everything. It's like everything. You've got to look at what was happening at that time. And I'm not defending Section 28 in any way, shape, or form. I'm trying to get that you have to look at what was going on in the world at the time. This was a horrendous thing for everybody because nobody had ever seen this. There were stories about it coming from monkeys and this and that, and it was horrendous. It was in the news all the time about this and the other. And I did watch a great program which I found fascinating called "It's a Sin," which gave me a fresh perspective on the whole thing because I lived through the 80s and it was just frightening, frightening. You were just worried about who you met. Did you know if you touched their hand, it's a bit like catching
That's
diarrhea then. But that's the whole
what you're
thing.
describing is COVID-19, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, actually, all of a sudden, because that impacted everybody, we closed that down pretty quickly.
we
We did
did.
put similar measures in place for COVID back in the like the 80s when we had HIV and AIDS going around. Would it have been as bad as it is? I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert.
No, this is the whole thing, isn't it? We don't know. We're talking retrospective about something that happened in 40 odd years ago, and the whole world's changed. As you say, this at the time was seen as a gay plague. Really only happened to men.
So by default, and I've got an emotional response to this, clearly, let's eradicate the gays off the world then, because if we've got no gays, we've got no gay plague, and they're not going to challenge traditional moral values, as Margaret Thatcher likes to call it. Well, I'm sorry, love, but we're here. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, and I would stand up for that. I just think that's quite reasonable and absolutely true. There's no why should you dictate to anybody what they can and can't be or
That's
do?
exactly what happened through this Section 28. I mean, it was that bad, Dad, that when it got repealed in 2003, later on, when he was Prime Minister, David Cameron actually apologised for Section 28 being in place. Like, that's how bad it was.
Yeah, so
if we go back to, because obviously I'm going to be emotional about it. When you go
yeah,
to secondary schools, I came out to a teacher when I was in year 7, year 8.
you did, which is what? How old were you in year seven?
Year 7 is when you first go to school. So that was 95. So say 96, I'd have been what, 12, 13?
Okay, that's really is that? Do you think that's really young, or is that? How can I put this? Is that probably later than a lot of people think they are gay? Because it sounds to me like 12, 13 would be when you come to puberty and when you're starting to think about girls or whatever.
I think it's when, yeah, puberty is that. I think that's usually the big indicator when these kind of conversations happen more, is when people become more aware of sexual desires. But of course, there's more to being gay than just who you have sex with in the bedroom, for God's sake. But I think it's different people develop at different rates, don't they? I know of children who are primary school age and are very confident in their sexual orientation, their identity. Yet for some people, it doesn't happen until they're much later.
But that's today, isn't it? Today's society. If you go back to the 1990s, when were you thinking you were gay, or did you know you were gay?
I was thinking I was gay. How would I know I was gay when I was growing up in a vacuum?
Well, that's the problem. I don't know.
And the only messaging I was getting was George Michael, who was being arrested for cottaging in some toilets in wherever it was in London, and he was being arrested for it. Or, as we talked about previously, you had drag acts who were being laughed at, or you had all the HIV. Like, I vividly remember that HIV and AIDS advert with the gravestone that falls over. That's the only thing I know about being gay
At your age, at 12.
at my age. I mean, that's covert. I wasn't even aware that I was consciously making those connections, but that's exactly what was going on in the world at the time. And I was convinced that there was nobody else in school who was like me.
And
So
was there?
nobody to talk to.
Was there anybody in school that was like you, that had the same feelings? Did you know?
No,
And how did the teacher react then?
I couldn't say the word.
So so you said you thought you were gay at 12 and you told a teacher. So I don't understand. What did you say
So
then?
I sat down. So I said to one of my teachers, "Can I talk to you about something?" She was like, "Yes." So we met after school, and I vividly remember it. So there was a boy, I think he was in my tutor group, who was seen as kind of the naughty one in the year group type thing, always in trouble. So she had to deal with him with a detention, I think, after school. So she dealt with him, and then she came out to see me, and she was like, "Right, I'm going to pretend I'm telling you off, just so to kind of keep the cover. It looks like you're in trouble type thing. So there's a reason for you being here." Did that, then we sat down. I think it was in her room, and she's like, "What does he want to talk about?" And I kind of closed up. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't kind of answer anything. She went, "Okay, let me ask you some questions." And then through a process of elimination, yes and no questions, I think the last question was, "Do you think you might be gay?" And I went, "Yes." Like, it took that much courage for me to even have that conversation, and I still couldn't say the word.
Yeah, that must be. I feel so sad.
But this is what I mean by the action impact of Section 28. This is what it did. And this, I know, I can see you're getting emotional, but this is just me. Multiply that by how many thousands there are of people around the country who have been through that in that exact situation, just because someone thought we had an inalienable right to be gay.
You have an inalienable, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, you have an inalienable right to be whatever you want to be.
Yeah, and that's how it should be.
But yeah, Section 28, I guess, and I don't want to justify this in any way, shape, or form, but I guess Maggie Thatcher was doing what she thought was right or wrong or whatever. She just thought this was maybe, I don't know, a good idea or whatever to win a letter. But I can't get my head around why anybody would do that, because being gay has been in our society since time immemorial. It's always been, I guess, somewhat of a hidden thing. It's never been an open thing a lot of the time. If you look at, as we discussed before, Jeremy, can't think of his name. There was a guy, Jeremy, who was a Liberal MP. Sorry?
Jeremy Thorpe?
Yes, I think that's his name. Was a Liberal MP, came out as gay, and he was hounded. Again, it didn't affect me at all.
and this is only my perspective on it, it's challenging the norms of society.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we see now being mirrored in the way that society generally act towards the trans community and the non-binary community. It's something that people say they don't understand, don't want to understand, and challenges their way of life, or think it challenges their way of life.
See, I don't understand it, but your inalienable right is to be what you want to be. You want to be transgender, you be transgender. You want to be bi or asexual, whatever. That's your inalienable right. Whether I understand it, I don't know. Whether I will ever understand it, I don't know.
But what you are is accepting and willing to learn and to listen.
Yeah,
That's
I'll
a
listen.
crucial difference that I think
I'll
between.
listen. If you came out and said, "I'll be a transgender," okay, you want to be transgender. Want to be asexual? Be asexual.
Yeah.
Again, this goes back to my point. I don't understand why people get so hung up on all this. I'm always up to listen to people. I don't, you know, I'm tolerable. I tolerate people. I understand their attitudes. It's you are what you are.
Mm.
I'm not going to change that. Draw back to Section 28. I just think it would never be put into law today. There'd be so much of an outcry.
Would it?
Yeah.
What's happening towards the trans community? What's happening with the draft guidance that just come out in the
That's not a Section 28. They're not saying you cannot promote homosexuality or transgender or anything
They'll
like
be
that.
clever with the wording, but I would say watch it very carefully. It's a real concern.
The other side to that, which I was going to ask you about, was about these suppressants. Did you read that about these?
To give some context, so the CAS review has just come out as a full review that basically looked at what is happening to children and young people who are going through some kind of transitioning and what are they being given and how effective is it. And it's basically come, I think, from what I've read, and I've read very brief, so this may not be factually correct, is it was saying that there's not enough evidence to know that we should be giving children puberty blockers because we don't know what the impact is on their bodies. The concern is, though, from when I speak to people who are in the trans community, is that we're then putting trans children through puberty that is very traumatic for them because they don't want to have those parts of their body, whether they're talking male or female, and they're then having to go through a process where they are going to grow. So, I think we're linking it back to Section 28, I think we're in a real interesting area where some of that could become Section 28 like law.
That would be horrendous because you've got.
And I'm not even talking about the medical side of being trans. I'm talking about the social side. So the guidance that's come out that's been up for consultation, and we'll see what happens with it. Watch this space. Is that it's saying that even to use a child's different name to the one they're given at birth, schools cannot do. So if I was in school today and I was thinking I might be trans and I wanted to identify as a woman or as a girl, then I wanted to use the name, I don't know, Stephanie, for example. This draft guidance is saying the school cannot call me Stephanie unless they've spoken to the parents. Which in this situation,
that's a double-edged sword, isn't it, really?
Yeah, go on. Why? Because I know what my answer is, but
so it's double-edged sword because little David wants to be Stephanie. He may not have told his parents. And we're talking now about being open and honest with parents today and having that conversation. And I guess that goes back to this whole thing about, are his parents open and honest with him? So would you go to me and say, Dad, I want to be called Stephanie? And then if the school ring me up and say, hello, Barry, David's just told me he wants to be called Stephanie, is that all right? And I'm going, what the chuffing X is about? Because to me, it's I don't know. My feelings. I don't care if you're called Stephanie or whatever. Talk to me first, and let's.
But then if you link it back to, you've talked about people who've shared their views and then they're not accepting of being gay. Imagine if they had a child who thought they might be trans. And we're obviously making assumptions here generally, but there are people out there who are not accepting of it.
No, they won't, and that's my fear. That school could effectively put that child in danger. So you've got a safeguarding issue there.
Exactly.
Because little David may come from a family that are very strict. I don't know.
Strict. They could have very strict values and belief systems.
And all of a sudden they find out that little David wants to be called Stephanie. That child is going to go through hell. They're going to go through hell anyway. But why make it even more hell? So taking it one stage further, how's that going? You're his teacher. You're Dave's teacher. That's going to put you in a terrible situation.
Morally, I would
Safeguarding.
be like, I'm going to call him Stephanie or call her Stephanie because the pronouns will change alongside it, I would assume.
Yeah.
But then I know that I'm going against what the law is telling me and what the statute. Well, actually, this guidance is coming out won't be statutory, so there's a almost a get out clause if you like. But I'm going against potential parental wishes. But then in school, we need to protect our children from harm.
Which is a moral dilemma.
So I mean, this whole piece of guidance is massively contested, and there's I think, loads of issues with it anyway. But
As I said to you, how do you, and one of the things that we need to work on as a society and as parents and son is how do we approach that subject when you think somebody's gay? How do I approach that subject?
well, I think we talked about it earlier, didn't we, in the episode where if schools are talking about it and are open about it anyway, you shouldn't need to wait for a trans child to walk through your doors and kind of going, I'm trans, by the way, talk about me. It should just be something that's part of school culture. Like even be doing like pride events, for example. A load of schools now will do things for pride, which is great, but we'll also think about diversity in all its forms, which means that children know that it's okay to be who you want to be, and in this environment it's accepting because it gives them somewhere to explore it and to think about it before they even then go home. And then when they do have those conversations,
Yeah, because that's
even reading books like And Tango Makes Three, which is based on true story, a book about two gay penguins from New York Zoo who adopt an egg because it didn't have a mum and a dad.
phenomenal.
Having that book, right, and taking that home to read just opens that conversation up.
Yeah, again, I think you've got to be careful because if you've got a very strict moral family, that could get this teacher into problems.
Then bring the conversation on, is what I would
No,
say.
no, I'm just saying because I'm trying to get through that with all the best will in the world, all these things happen. We still need to get to the parents, and by taking that book home, might well bring open that conversation and say, well, actually, we talked about this, David? Let's talk. Do you understand this? And do you understand two males adopting an egg? Why they adopted the egg? Etc., etc., and try and draw that conversation out. But it's still very hard as a parent to understand how you need to draw that out, and that's the bit I struggle with.
But you don't need to draw it out. It's just, I think sometimes it's just that messaging by a child understanding that families are different is effectively the message of that book. It doesn't even need to go into the fact that, it's not about sex at all, right? This is just about two people who love each other. It's exactly the same way we talk about straight parents.
Yeah.
Mum and daddy love each other. End
It's
of
more,
conversation.
yeah, it's more about would that make you as a say an 8-year-old boy feel better and able to talk to me later on in life about things if you'd have had that book?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Because although I may not have known it at the time, if I'd have brought a book home like that and read that with you, even knowing that you didn't pass judgment on that book would have an impact on me subconsciously because you haven't shot it down. And we're not talking about me, we're talking about other characters in a different story, aren't we?
Yeah. And
And then like if say for example we go to school and they're doing relationships, education, work, and they're talking about different families and the rest of it, and some families have got two dads, some have got single parents, some have got divorced, it all kind of comes into the same mix. You go home, as kids do, I mean, you know this from your grandkids. Kids come home and they talk about what they've done in school today. And then they go, we learned this today. And you go, oh, that's great. Isn't it nice that the world is accepting and everyone can be who they want to be?
yeah.
It doesn't need to go any further than that.
No, true. It's just interesting, I guess. But that's the whole thing about the point of this whole thing, isn't it? It's interesting to see where we're going with this whole story, how it's evolving.
But no, to answer your question, I do think it would have had an impact on me in a positive way if it wasn't in place, because there would have been other people at school who would have potentially been open around their sexuality, which would have meant I wouldn't have felt alone. Thinking about the one boy that I quite fancied all the way.
I was going to say that was my mind popped into my head there, thinking that guy's quite cute anyway, and he's in my same team, if you like.
Exactly, but I was a big Spice Girls fan, still am, but now I look back at it and I'm going to go, basically anyone who was a Spice Girls fan was a girl or a gay. If I'd have known that at the time, I'd have known, brilliant, there's a whole other community of people out there who were like me.
Isn't that a generalisation though?
Asian.
I'm sure that's not every single man that went to the Spice Girl thing was a gay.
And have you been to a concert recently?
No, but I'm just thinking when I having a young daughter at the time, if she'd have said to me, Dad, I want to go and see the Spice Girls, okay, we're going to see the Spice Girls.
Yeah, but you're different. You're going as a parental responsibility. You don't actually want to be there for yourself. But no, I just mean that, actually culturally, it's quite nice to know of other people that, like being a football fan, I'm sure you can relate to that one. It's nice knowing there are other people who support the same team.
Yeah,
You
it
can always
is.
have something in common with the other people that support that team.
But it's like anything, isn't it? It's like anything you enjoy. If you enjoy that, you gravitate towards those people.
Yeah, but I didn't have anyone to gravitate towards. That's
No,
the
but
point you're making.
yeah, but I'm saying, so if you'd have known that there was other people like that, you probably did gravitate to them, but you didn't know they were
No, I
gay.
didn't gravitate. Well, yeah, I mean the guy I kind of fancied, he was in my extended friendship. I mean, I wouldn't really say I had many friends anyway, to be fair, at secondary school. Um, but the other people that have since come out didn't really mix with in school.
How many, just out of interest, from your peer group at school, what percentage have actually came out as gay? Approximately, not sort of, exactly 33% or 2%, but do you know of any percentage?
From people I can only talk about people I know of who
Yeah.
have come out since. In my year, there were three of us. But I
Yeah,
just the point is, I think if I'd have known people were,
of like-minded.
yeah, were not straight, then I think that may have opened up opportunities to make new friendships and not felt quite so alone, basically through childhood.
It's interesting the way we move on, as you say.
Yeah. I mean, I think I still would have been bullied, but I wonder if the bullying would have been less because I'd have been calling it out and other people would have called it out.
Let's just switch this around a couple of minutes. You mentioned earlier about you and your partner are looking to be foster parents or adoptees. So what if one of you, say you had two children, two adopters, right? And one said to you, Daddy, I'm not sure I want to be a boy anymore. What would your reaction to that be?
What the only other thing you can be accepting and respecting their decision.
And I'm just asking because
Like I
you
just
asked me that question.
no,
I asked you the question right back at you. I'd be surprised if you said, oh, okay, I've taught him not to do
uh,
that.
I think we're going to say, what would you say if your child said they want to be straight? I'd be like, no, you can't be doing that. But it's the same thing, isn't it? Is what you've said. It's about being respectful and open and to who they want to be and making sure they're happy.
And,
That's what I mean.
it's truly that. All I've ever wanted for all of my children and my grandchildren is to be happy and healthy.
Yeah.
And if that means they're gay or lesbian or transgender or asexual or bisexual or C-sexual, whatever the new term is, I don't know. Honestly, I don't care. I will always love them. That's my goal in life.
This is your mantra. Every episode, you seem to say the same thing on it. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's good to get the message home, but it's like I know when you're coming to an end of an episode now, you'll kind of just say that bit to summarize it all up.
No. It's we joke about it, but I honestly believe that life is too short.
Oh God, yeah, massively.
You need to let people be who they are. Get rid of all the crap and the rubbish. Don't worry about things you can't change. Worry about things you can change. I can change my shirt. I can change my jumper. I can't change that I've got bad knees. Well, I can have no surgery, but you know what I mean? I can't change the weather. I can't go, do you know what? It's going to be sunny today.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
am I worrying about it?
I think the other thing as well, like as you say that is exactly what happened to Section 28, right? So the whole idea was we couldn't talk about being gay. Didn't stop a generation of us coming out, did it? Clearly not. Do you know what I mean? Like it didn't eradicate those thoughts in me.
In some respects, it probably turned people the other way as well, thinking because you know what happens with in some experiences, people say wet paint, they'll touch it, and I'm not saying people tried to be, but people.
There may well been people that would have explored things.
And that's the thing, isn't it? So you're not going to eradicate things by saying don't do it or don't promote it.
So you're right there that it doesn't always. It's that psychology of it, isn't it? But I think the idea was kind of if we don't talk about it, it's a bit like the American, is it don't say, don't tell kind of whatever the law is. Don't say gay law in America's, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
That's true as well.
But that's the thing, isn't it? You know, it's like if you don't talk about it, it's not real. Well, it is real.
You just hurt the people who want to be like that because you don't talk about it and don't accept them for who they are.
And it becomes worse. And then you have an underground army of things. You know, if you go back in history, you had lots of revolutions where people have dictated what they're going to do to people, and then people say, "But you know what? We're going to rise up against it." And that's what happened.
You say that. That's exactly. Section 28 is. I think it's almost been seen as a real interesting part of the civil rights, of the rights movement for the LGBT community, because it meant actually this law was coming in. We do everything we can to go against it.
But that is a civil right, isn't it? To be who you are is a civil right.
Yeah, but you know, we talk about civil rights meaning the like race and the kind of things that happen in America more, don't we?
We do, but you've got to look at it as a more broader concept. You cannot just say civil rights is about your race or religion. It's about the whole thing.
Yeah, when I talk about civil rights, that's typically what everyone thinks about rather than everything else. But yeah, you're right, civil rights are more than that. But yeah, I've lost my train of thought now. But I thought that it was. I'm sure I might be wrong on this, but the LGBT charity Stonewall, I think, was founded off the back of Section 28 as a way of making sure this does not happen anymore.
Yeah, because there was a guy called Peter Tatchell. Did he not kick up about this?
Yeah, he would have done massively, I would imagine. Be surprised if he didn't. But loads of positive steps happened because of Section 28 in combating it. So not to say it was ever a good thing, but I think
it was a good thing in the respect that it made people sit up and go, do you know what? This isn't right. Because what had happened if Section 28 hadn't have occurred? Would Stonewall have occurred?
Eventually, but it may well have been in some other form.
So it's a catalyst for it.
That's the word I was thinking of. Yeah, catalyst.
So it's made it in that respect. There's only the one good thing I can pick out of it in the whole crap that it was, is it made people sit up and think and go, this isn't right. I'm not having this. We need to do something about that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the consequences of when our esteemed leaders think, oh, we're going to do this. You know, that's the whole point of this is Section 28 made the British public do something, or the United Kingdom public do something.
Yeah.
And get behind the civil rights movement and do something. Fair play to them.
So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Educating Barry. We hope our conversation today has given you some food for thought.
Remember, growth isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share with someone who might need to hear this. We'd love to hear from you too.
So please do share your thoughts or suggest new content by emailing us at educatingbarry@queered.co.uk or using the hashtag educatingbarry on social media. Until next time, keep talking, keep listening and keep loving. This is David and Barry signing off.